Welcome back. The 10-year limit to prosecute felony sex assault in Colorado could soon be doubled, in part because of the Bill Cosby scandal. That bill was given preliminary approval in a House committee this week.
Unanimous verdicts will still be needed when it comes to the death penalty. Lawmakers killing a bill that would have made it slightly easier for Colorado juries to sentence someone to die. Instead of a unanimous decision, the bill would have allowed death if 11 out of 12 were in favor, but that bill did not pass out of committee.
And don't leave it out unless you want it stolen. We've all heard those puffer car warnings from police across the metro. Well, now a new bill could make it legal for some people to leave their cars while warming them up. What's that all about? Why that change?
Well, joining us today to talk about what's been accomplished in the first month of the legislative session and what still needs to get done in the next few months, a couple of people who are paid to have to go to the Capitol and follow word for word, line by line, all of these bills every day.
We're excited to have you both here. Kristen Wyatt covers the Capitol for the Associated Press, and Corey Hutchins writes for the Colorado Independent. So we thank you both for being here this
Thank you for having us.
Now, let's just jump into the first month of the legislature. Kristen, what's the biggest thing that you think has been accomplished so far?
It's actually a very typical election year. We've got a Democratic House, a Republican Senate. They're kind of talking to voters, not really each other. They really don't have, the one thing the legislature has to do is write a budget. They're probably not really going to get to that hard work until there's some more, they have more tax numbers out. So right now they're just kind of talking to voters. They've really accomplished very, very little. Probably the Bill Cosby bill is the biggest thing moving. Right now it's just kind of making your message out there to try to tell voters, here's what I stand for.
Corey, what do you think?
Well, we kind of mentioned this in the lead-in a little bit with the death penalty juries bill. I've kind of been scoping out the Capitol, waiting to see if the Grim Reaper was going to come in and actually register as a lobbyist this year, because Death's agenda has kind of been on tap at the Capitol, and in a few different ways. That bill you mentioned was killed, but it was clearly in response to the 2 death penalty trials we had over the summer, where the prosecutors weren't able to get the juries to agree on a death sentence, and so we had one lawmaker saying, well, let's try and make it a little easier in Colorado to get these convictions. On the other hand, there's another bill that proponents call a death with dignity bill, and critics would call physician-assisted suicide. That would allow people with terminal illnesses under certain circumstances to end their lives legally. And there's another bill that, or at least an idea, proposal from a Republican lawmaker that's also aimed at the death penalty. And that bill would give prosecutors a second shot with a jury if they couldn't get a unanimous verdict the first time. So, we're dealing with death in the legislature, and one of these might even end up on the ballot if they don't, if they can't get out of the state capitol.
One of the things that fascinates me are bills that we know what the status is going to be before it even gets proposed. And you said the death with dignity. There was one in the House and the Senate. It died in the Senate, and it's still alive in the House. So it's going to pass the House, and then it gets to the Senate, and it's likely going to face the same fate that the first one did. What do you do when you know ahead of time? It feels like a waste of time at times.
We always say pandering is in the eyes of the beholder. Are you you can say it's really cynical to do something you know will never make it to the governor's desk. You could also say, look, you're telling voters, here's what you sent me down here to do. Maybe it's not going to pass, but you believe it and so do I, so we're going to try. There was a really good example of that a couple weeks ago. The same afternoon, a Democratic House Education Committee passed out a pretty expensive bill to fund full-day kindergarten statewide. 1 hour later, a Senate committee killed a bill to ask voters to do the same thing. But then they can, tell people when they go home, look, I'm standing up for you by keeping a check on the pocketbook, or I'm standing up for you by trying to help your kids. So it's kind of that kind of session, I think.
And you talked about budget already, and we know that is top of mind for everyone. Really, seriously, at what point will the legislature tackle that?
The insiders say it's probably they have to, but probably right now they have to budget to existing law, which means they can't assume they're going to make a deal to get more money from something called the hospital provider fee. This is a tax or fee that hospitals or hospital patients pay. There's going to be a March 1st another revenue forecast, which is where economists come to lawmakers to tell them how much dollars are coming into down the pipe and how much they can budget for. Probably after that March 1st forecast is when it will get serious.
Yeah, when it comes to another big thing involving the budget issue is what you mentioned, the hospital provider fee. This is kind of Governor Hickenlooper's really big plan. It's a very complex, arcane issue that I probably couldn't explain in just a couple minutes on TV.
We've
but you
tried
should
on the show.
It's not so pretty.
Yeah, go to the Colorado Independent and you can read a couple pieces we put up about the hospital provider fee and the kind of politics involved in the policy. But right now it's just kind of at a stalemate because you have Republicans saying we have this legal memorandum that says the governor cannot, his plan to reclassify this into a different entity is unconstitutional. Then we have two lawyers from previous governors who came out recently and said, no, it actually is doable. We've looked at it. Everybody's kind of waiting on what the Attorney General says. The governor asked for that opinion on January 7th. We don't have it yet. Kind of waiting until that comes down to see what we can do.
And politicians can always use a budget squeeze to push their side. For example, with this money dilemma, Democrats want to talk about roads, roads, roads. You sit in traffic too long. We need this to help expand roads and transportation. Republicans are saying, hey, look, what's causing all this problem is Medicaid expansion. Let's talk about reducing how much we spend on Medicaid. So it's a chance for you to get your side out. I think we have yet to see who's going to come out on top of that conversation.
Outside of hospital provider fee, what's the biggest thing that's still going to happen over the next couple of months?
Oh, we're going to have an election, right? So this is an election year, and one of the big things that's going on at the Capitol, I think, is because like all the people in the House are up for re-election. I think half the Senate is up for re-election. We're seeing a lot of these bills that are just being introduced where, as you said earlier, we know what's going to happen. They're going to die, but we're going to put them out there anyway so we can go out on the campaign trail and say, hey, look, I'm trying to expand gun rights or something like that. And we do have folks, you know, they have to go to the Capitol every day and do their legislative work, but then they also have to go back home and talk to their people and try and get them to get those votes.
I think that's called political posturing, right?
Yeah.
Kristen, what do you see?
They're going to do some interesting marijuana-related bills. People are kind of sick of hearing about pot. One thing, for example, our state and a lot of pot states don't allow outsiders to invest in the marijuana business or to own a stake in a business. They're going to talk about changing that to open up some capital or open up a big flood of money potentially into our business. Also, they may talk about allowing like pot clubs, like Amsterdam-style coffee shops, and there's going to be a lot of interesting talk about where that goes.
But all of that has to wait at least one more day because the legislature is closed tomorrow for President's Day.
Death and pot. Good topics. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.